horses. Today we are going on with our stories, and today's story is one of mine. If you have one to send in, please do. We're delighted to tell it and or share it in whatever way suits you. There are instructions about that below in the description. So today's story, as I was moving recently, I found a box of photos amongst my mother's stuff, and out popped this photo, which brought back so many memories. I really had to sit down and look at it and really think and remember. And it's not been an easy story to tell, as you may see as we go along. And I have tried to sit outside under a tree or on a rock or with a horse, which is usually my more happy place for doing a video. And today it's blizzard. I don't know. I don't know if you can tell out the window or not. It's still snowing. It's been snowing heavily all day in Spain in March. But it's the temperature's just 0, 1, just above freezing. So it's not lying. It's just making everything all beautifully muddy again. Anyway, let's get back down to Andalusia, where they never have this weather, and on to Sabino's story, which is from, well, Sabino's story as far as he was in my life. Obviously, his story is bigger, and there's parts of it I do not know. We can only imagine. So this was in the early 90s, and I'd been working for several years already with my classical equitation teacher, my first classical equitation teacher. It wasn't something I'd ever heard of in Scotland. We were like, oh, dressage is only for people who are scared of jumping. And suddenly I was in Spain doing a bit of traveling around, a bit of an extended holiday, met someone that had a horse, one thing led to another, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, ended up going to see this guy and seeing these Spanish horses and piaffe and passage and all this, I mean, but dancing beautifully. There was nothing forced or held or like false about the movement, you know. It was like the horses were doing what they would naturally do out in the field. It was so beautiful. I was just... So I gave up my whole life and said, yes, I'll come and work for you. Anyway, some years later, I was doing some freelance work alongside that work round about the local breeders. And one day I was riding at a place and a guy showed up and asked me if I would come along and have a look at his one of his stallions that was needing some training and the young horses for starting. So we arranged an appointment. I went along. And as I arrived, I was a bit, whoa, this is a fancy place. So it was one of those places that was very popular back then. I don't know now if it's still a thing, but where they would have events like weddings, christenings, communions, birthday parties, that kind of thing, you know, big events, lots of people. So they had a huge restaurant with a big terrace overlooking a bull ring and an arena, and the stables were kind of up round behind there. So the bull ring, of course, they had little young bulls in there when they were having parties and people would run them around and, you know, all the macho guys, potential would-be wannabe bullfighters, which, of course, this is a long time ago. Nowadays, this is not a thing that goes on anymore very much. Anyway, not the point of the story. Sabino, the point of the story. So I arrived and they had this horse tied up, already tacked up, which is not my favorite scenario. And still to this day, if I'm teaching someone, I really like to watch the horse from the moment they catch it, take it, tie it up and put the tack on. But anyway, this one was already tacked up, so there was no opportunity to see the reaction. And, you know, you get so much information already from the horse's attitude by how the expression of the saddle and bridle arriving and going on. So anyway, I took the horse into the arena and I then became aware there were several guys kind of showed up and they were all leaning over the fence and like talking to each other, sniggering a bit. And I thought, well, it's just a novelty thing, you know. Not so many women back then in Spain were riding, and especially not training and starting young horses. and also being a foreigner, you know, again, way back then when there was not so many foreigners around. So I thought, well, it's just a bit of a novelty thing. Anyway, there I am with this horse. Beautiful, beautiful purebred Andalusian stallion. And just as I was about to get on, so I'd gathered up the reins, and I did notice the horse tense up a little bit as soon as I did that. And I went to put my foot in the stirrup. And as I did so, the owner shouted out for me to stop. And I looked over and he said to me, oh, don't get on, don't get on. This horse is really dangerous and he throws everybody off. Nobody can ride him. Don't get on. So what do you do in this situation? Well, I know what I would do now, but back then, it was a bit of a different situation. And what do you do in that situation? I could feel this horse and I thought, yes, he's tense, but I didn't feel he was really crazy. So, and I was also a bit like, you know, fuck these assholes. Oh, excuse my language. So I got on and I was halfway on and he started to move off. So I just let him move off. I just let him walk off. And then I just basically walked around this arena and let him do what he wanted. I did not try to interfere with him very much at all. You know, I was in a closed, probably 20 by 20 space. So he was quite happy to walk around. And I just really went with him. And of course, this is a long time ago. You know, nowadays I would be consciously like wiggling my toes and the breathing and the grounding and the relaxation. But this was before I'd really kind of defined that on a conscious level. And it was for me then, and I think it is still valid today, although I've gone through a huge journey to come back to what I knew back then, is love. I saw this horse and he was so, so beautiful. And just that guy saying that and the look of all these guys, you know, my heart just went out to him. I was just so filled with compassion and love for this beautiful, beautiful horse that I somehow managed to just walk around with him. And from there we went on. You know, I would just get on and I would just go with the horse. So this is something, of course, has become a very well-known thing now. You know, back then, in Europe, there wasn't much talk about natural horsemanship. It was before Monty Roberts, before all these things became very big fashions. And the idea of go with the horse, ask the horse to go with you so you can go together, which is a Ray Hunt Tom Doran's concept that's very, very well known. I'd never heard of that back then. And when I found this picture, this lovely picture of Sabino, I thought, oh my God, that is what he taught me. He was he was just so gorgeous. And it taught me so, so, so much because I could go with him and then I would ask him to go with me so we could go together, although those were not the words going through my head at the time. Didn't know any of those words or phrased that way. And it was very clear when it was too much. You know, as soon as it was a little bit too much pressure, he would get all tense and you could feel him, you know, and you're like, okay, if I carry on, he is going to go off on one and I'm going to be flying through the air. The one thing I remember that first day, I don't think I even asked him to trot. I think maybe I had a little jog, just because I think he went into a trot and then I could just relax and bring him back. But when I wanted to get off, whenever I asked him to stop, he would get so tense. I thought he's going to. So in the end, I just very gently slipped off while he was still walking. And one of the things I did find out about him later was that they used him in these exhibitions for the events. And they had a little ramp going up into this bull ring and they would bring him out and they would do pissade, like in a rearing position on the back legs and leaping. And of course, this airs above the ground should be the very pinnacle of a long classical training. But in his case, they were just taking advantage of his natural tendencies to want to get away and up to a point where they could still control him. And when they got to a point that they couldn't ride him anymore, they started to do this on the ground until that also got to a point where he wouldn't tolerate it anymore. Anyway, at this moment, so I managed to slide off gently, and the guy said, "Oh well, would you come and ride him?" So I said yes, because this horse, they wanted to enter for the like showing best of breed thing. And of course that you show in hand, and then there's a small ridden, very basic ridden test. So you have to be able to ride the horse, otherwise you so they'd never been able to take him because it was so long he was not rideable. So this, the guy said, was the goal. So I went and I would just take him, and I thought one day, let's see what happens if we go out. You know, this place was in the country, so there were small roads and tracks. There wasn't a lot of traffic around. So we just used to go out, and I used to walk along, and I remember I used to just sing to him and feel the beat of his feet and try and feel where the feet were and sing and sing and sing. So on we went. And one day, my lovely Swedish friend Anna was visiting me. So she was coming on my rounds with me, and this breeder was one of the places on my list that day. So we went, and I was on, and she said, "Oh my goodness, what a beautiful horse. He's so gorgeous. Can you stop so I can take a photo?" So for us old people, remember when there wasn't the phone and the digital and we could just take hundreds of photos. Every photo was valuable because you only had a reel of 24 or 36, and then you had to pay to get them developed. Remember those moments? And you would go all excited to get them from the shop and just go, "Oh my God," all of the rubbish. Anyway, so she wanted me to stand still so we could get the photo properly set up, of course. And I said, "Oh, I can't." I said, "I can't." I was still by this time. We could walk and trot and go around, and we'd even had a little canter out on the tracks by this time. And I said, "But I can't stop. I can't. If I ask him to stand still, he's going to freak out." And she came and stood in the arena with her big camera. And she said, "Okay, let's just try." So I rode up to her very slowly and just giving little half halts, like, "Come on, we can stop, we can stop." And it felt like on that moment that he just saw the camera and went, "Okay, I will pose for this photo." And he stood perfectly still, and she took the photo. And of course I was like, "Oh, goodbye, goodbye, goodbye." And from that day on, he would stand. I mean, what an amazing horse, that from that one moment when he realized it was okay, that he trusted me enough that he would just stand despite all the terrible things that had happened to him. Anyway, fast forward, I carried on with the horse, and we did make it to the Andalusian championships for pure Spanish horses. And we, because he did not have the best conformation actually, and especially in his back legs, they were very straight and upright. His whole back end didn't have very, the angles in. And so it's quite amazing that they got him doing all these airs above the ground stuff, and also explains why it was painful and torturous for him to do that, even the way they rode him. So yeah, so we got there, and the guy was like, "Okay, one of the grooms is going to present him," because I'm very tall. I'm like 180, like nearly 5'11", nearly 6 foot tall. And the horse, I mean, he was a big horse for a Spanish horse. He was probably 15.3, maybe going on 16 hands, but standing beside me. "No, you make the horse look too small." No, 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 no. So we had one of the guys practicing with him, because of course you have to trot them up and down and go through all their paces. But he very quickly went, "No, no, 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 I'm not having this." So I ended up having to also present him. And I did find in an album a photo of that, me with my funny thing on, and him looking at when I looked in at the photo, I was like, "What were we doing?" Both making a funny face. Anyway, and we came, I think, 10th in the lineup. So, and I think was it the first 10 or the first 12 went through to the ridden part. So we did that. We did the ridden part. And by this time, of course, I could walk, trot, canter, do all the basic figures, as long as I didn't ask too much. So I always had to be in a slight giving, relaxed position. There was no like really sitting back trying to gather him underneath me thing kind of going on at all. And I had to let him have just enough contact, more than I would normally like, but just to keep that thing going, you know, that was the only way. I started off with having no contact at all, and then I tried many times, you know, in small ways to be able to rebalance him a bit and take his weight back, but no, it was not happening. So we did the best we could, which turned out to be good enough to put us up to second place. Not, I will say, because we were any good, because we weren't. It was shit. Oh, keep swearing today. But just because everybody else was even worse. They were so bad. And it was actually a heartbreaking day for me, because at the competition and in the ridden bit, going before or after me, was a horse I'd trained and ridden called Molinete, who was a very, very, very special horse. Anyway, that is another story. So the owner, of course, was absolutely delighted by this, and now thinking I can show off even more with my horse. So he then put the horse into a show with a guy rider, and he put up with it for a while. They did a little bit, but I don't think it was even a month. And Sabino just went, no, 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 and started with his tricks, as they called it again. He just said, no, I'm not putting up with it. And, you know, good on him, because the amount that so many horses suffer all over the world in all different kinds of training, what they put up with from humans is quite unbelievable. And I think so many horses have the ability just to, you know, to shut down, like lights on, nobody home, just from our human hecticness. And, you know, they're so still, sincere, serene beings. And we're, you know, it's amazing. So just from the human emotions and stuff we put on them, never mind the kind of training and stuff we do and all the illusion that we think we're teaching them all this stuff that they already know how to do if we got out their way and just found a way to communicate what we want. Anyway, that's another story. So yeah, he very quickly turned back into a crazy unrideable horse, until the owner, the breeder, because of course he was still using him for breeding, so there was no question he was getting rid of this horse. And his girlfriend, she loved the horses. She was very sweet, but she wasn't really a rider. She used to come and kind of hang out with me sometimes, and you know, I'd give her a few lessons on some of the 5-year-olds that were getting going. But she, you know, she wasn't very confident. It wasn't a thing of her life to be really into horses or to practice it a lot. But she, obviously, because her partner was had this big stud farm, it was kind of thrown in her face in her life. And she got very curious and fond of Sabino in the time as I was there. And so after all this happened, and he went back to his old self, and by that time I was not working there anymore, because I had a bit of an issue with him over the training of the 3-year-olds, which is another story. Anyway, and then one day I saw him at an event, and I was like, oh, hey, how's it going? And how's Sabino? And he said, well, I'll be honest with you. He said, my girlfriend can ride him. She's the only one that can ride him. Still nobody else could ride him or even really handle him. But she, with all her inexperience, he knew. I don't know if it was because it was another girl and he'd learned he could trust girls, or if it was just she, like me, really loved him. And it was just about the love. I don't know. But that really warmed my heart. So I guess he lived out the rest of his life covering his mares and not having to do very much work at all, because he clearly said, I am not putting up with any of that. But he taught me so much. And this was quite early on in my freelance work. And I came across so many horses with trauma and massive distrust, massive expectations of pain and suffering and terror from a human. And what I learned with Sabino enabled me to be able to help some of those horses a bit. and maybe help people understand them. Although I remember back then at that place and saying to one of the guys, there was one guy who worked there who we later became very good friends. And he kind of came over and said to me, oh, you know, how did you do that? And blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I don't know. I just love him. And I remember saying to him, you know, it's just like if you just go with him and feel where he's going and feel what he's doing. And then you can try a little bit. And if it's too much, let go. And then try something else. And if it's too much, let go. And just keep remembering you love him and sing Scottish songs to him. And I remember him just laughing and saying, but the other guys, they just didn't even want to know. They were just like, oh, I don't know what they thought. Maybe they thought I was some kind of witch. But this picture of him, which it must have been taken by my mum, because I found it in a box of my mum's photos. And you can see there, I'm kind of like, oh, a bit in a submissive kind of gesture with him. And that was in the little arena. Anyway, there was one day I went there and there was nobody there except me and this one guy who I got on with. And I got on Sabino and I was just wandering around. And then, I don't know, it just came in my head for whatever. Oh, let's try this, let's try that. And everything just flowed. It was like we were one body. And I stopped and I got off the horse and I looked at Chema and he looked at me and we just went, what the happened there? And I was like, I don't know. But it was magic. It was definitely magic. And yeah, but that's what we do it for, isn't it? For those moments where we have that pure connection and you just go and feel, and the horse, like the horse is your legs, like the horse is part of you. Such wonderful memories from Sabino. Beautiful horse. Beautiful, beautiful horse. Anyway, that's gone on quite long today. Thank you for listening. And thank you, Sabino, for teaching me so much that enabled me to go on and help other horses and humans. Thank you. You'll always be in my heart.